subtract your age, and that's the percent that you should put into stocks. So if you're 30, that's 100 minus 30 is 70. 70% of your money should go into stocks. If you're 50, it's 100 minus 50 equals 50. So 50% goes into stocks. And if you're 70, it's 30% goes into stocks. 100 minus 70 is 30. So that's a good way to think about how much money you should allocate or put into stocks as a percentage of the money that you have set aside to invest.
That's beautiful. I'm 68, 32% for stocks because stocks are riskier and we don't want to risk it too much because I'm going to need my money sooner. And I want to make sure my principal's still there, that it doesn't erode, and that the earnings aren't going to disappear because of the high risk.
Right.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's just a really good, solid way to think about it. I actually Googled whether that was still a good rule because, the modern world always has twists on things. And I was actually happy to see, instead of like lowering that 100 number, people were suggesting, because the market tends to be more volatile in the last 20 years, 30 years, that some people, instead of using 100, they'll use 110 or 120. So they end up with different allocations, different percentages that go into stocks, kind of with more of a bias toward stocks. So it was anyway. I think that 100 number is a good number to work off of. And then you can just decide, of the money that's left over, most of it's probably going to go into bonds, because the cash portion of your investments, the cash equivalent portion of your investments, is probably really your savings. So take your, if you already have money in savings, then you can just take that 100, subtract your age, what percent goes into stocks, and then the rest goes into bonds. And I think that's a very simple, straightforward way to think about it.
That's powerful. Mm-hmm. That's powerful.
And there are, in some of the fund companies out there, what they call target date funds, which lets you kind of look at your age and see where your target should be. And they're kind of based off that, although because they're put together by people with lots of fancy degrees and things, they talk about maybe doing it in a more complicated basis. But basically, they're doing 100 minus 30 or 100 minus your age. But a target date fund might be a simple way to find a fund that matches your allocation.
Would you repeat your formula again with the 3 elements?
So stocks, bonds, and cash?
Yep.
Okay, so I think of cash or your cash equivalents is really your savings, your non-investment dollars. So that's the money that you set aside for emergencies or for things that you're going to need to spend money on in the next 5 or 10 years. Maybe you're saving to buy a house. And so that becomes your cash equivalents. And it's, maybe 5, if you added everything together, maybe it's 5%, 5 or 10% of the total. And then your bonds are what you have left, when you do the 100 minus your age to get. So in your case, Steve, you said you're 68. So 32% of your investments would go into stocks. 58% would go into bonds, or if you don't have any cash set aside, that might be 48% would go into bonds. You have 10% that was in cash equivalents.
Very nice. Very nice.
But and as I'm saying this, I'm trying to be very careful, because investments are not one size fits all. Everybody has different things going on in their lives that can cause you to make changes. So and that's why I reference the need to have somebody give you advice individually, because then you can tweak these rules of thumb to come up with the best strategy, the best allocation between basic asset classes for you.
You're tying it together. I'm kind of quiet today, which people like, because I'm I'm taking notes and I'm paying close attention, because these are the things that, people really want to understand, because they have a fear. They don't want to lose. Older people, they can't lose their money. They need it. Younger people, if they lose it too early out, they might not be able to rebound and get back in and have more to go. So I think if everybody goes back and listens to what you've done so far today, they'll be able to figure out the right direction to go. In summary, to this point of the show, as we get to the next part you want to bring on, get an advisor, somebody that you can work with that's been recommended. Pay attention to what they're trying to teach you. They'll let you do as much as you want, I guess, if they really want to kind of listen to you. But be careful that you don't get too risky in the beginning. Get it started, let it start to grow. Then you got more to work with, and use some of these formulas that are tried and true. And that's pretty much what I think you're saying right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a good approach. Just
thank you.
Make sure that Steve, you talked about in what you did in your show last week, helping people focus on keeping it simple. And you said that's one of your strengths, probably not only with what you talked about last week, but in many things that you do in your life. I think the more we keep things simple, the better. So that quick summary is a great summary. So Steve, do you want to talk now about the three scenarios that you raised and kind of getting people to?
Yeah, I think we're ready for that. Let me make one quick statement, and it'll be quick, I promise, because I do want to hear those three scenarios, and we have a little less than 20 minutes, give or take, to get it all in today. But here's what I want to say. Different people that spend their money very wasteful. If they would just stop wasting it and hold on to it, like I said in the early part of the show, that a friend of mine that wants to start saving, she's just putting $100 under her pillow because she doesn't want to get mixed into the pool of money that needs to be spent on various things. And so I think one of the whole concepts that we're going to be hearing you talk about, I would guess, maintaining your principal and not losing your principal is great for some people. I mean, if they don't save anything at all, but they can start at least put $100 away a month or whatever the number is, then at least they've got something. Something's better than nothing. But if they do it in a very smart way, they can take that desire not to lose it, invest it carefully, and have it start to grow over a period of time and compound, which you talked about your last show, and turn that little bit of savings into a lot of money if it stays in long enough. So that's all I want.
So let me add to that, Steve, because I think this begins to answer the scenarios that we said that we want to talk about, and maybe this is even better than addressing those scenarios, although we can still do that. So if so we talked about the average returns, and sometimes percentages are what really screw people up, is because we're not all good with fractions. I know I'm not always good with fractions and percentages, so we have to think about things in terms of dollars, what that really means to us. That's why I asked you that trick question about what happens when the $10,000 goes down to $5,000, because that feels real. Because if you're that person with 10 grand and you've accumulated over a long period of time, or it's a gift or an inheritance from somebody you cared about, and all of a sudden $5,000 of it is gone through no fault of your own, just because the markets were down, that feels horrible, right?
And you got to factor in all the Kleenexes that you spend to wipe your tears. That's right.
And $5,000 is like, you can feel that in your back pocket. You can't necessarily feel 50% in your back pocket. But let's flip that around. So we talked about the average return on stocks is 9.5% going back to like 1925. $1,000 invested in 1925 in the stock market, in the S&P 500, would be worth $10,000 today. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Erase what I said. If we use that 9.5% rate of return, and if somebody were to invest $1,000 25 years ago in the S&P 500, and that's if you think about retiring for or investing for retirement, $1,000 invested in the stock market over 25 years is worth $9,668, almost 10 times your money. With a relatively small investment of $1,000, you could have almost $10,000.
Yeah. Another way to look at that, if you really want to think big, is 10,000 would be about 100,000.
Yes. So, and yeah, you just keep multiplying that out. So it's, yeah, absolutely. So 10,000, you just put another zero on the end. $100,000, put another zero on the end. So the power of compounding, the power of just putting your money into something and letting it grow is really amazing. And that's also true for people who don't have a big amount of money to put down, but would like to start saving monthly. So let's just say, for example, that you just wanted to invest $10 a month and you averaged what the S&P 500 average. And this is, I'm not doing the fine calculation here. I'm just using an investment calculator. But Steve, how much do you think $10 invested a month over 20 years at 9.5% would be worth? So you would have invested $120 a year for 20 years.
Whoa. 120 a year for 20 years.
So it's $2,400 you would have invested over that period of time.
Well, it's not the same as investing. I guess it'd probably be worth about, you invested $2,400. How many years? 10 years, you're saying?
Right. I'm just trying to make the point about what you were saying, how powerful, and why you started investing again. Just putting a little bit of money aside every month. You may not think that you can accumulate much, but if you invested $10 a month at 9.5%, so I'm just assuming, kind of an average rate of return for stocks, you would have invested over 20 years. You would have invested $2,400, and it would be worth just under $7,800.
Wow, that's
so $100 a month could be close to $80,000. So just think about what a difference, and don't get too caught up on the math. I'm just using some calculators that I have available to me to do some general assumptions, but it speaks to the power of investing, the power of just setting your plan with that fixed dollar amount that you have, or that amount of money that you want to add every month. It grows, and it can make a big difference as you're planning for those big goals out into the future.
You know what I like about that? That was $100 a month for, what are you talking, 20 years?
20 years.
Is $80,000, give or take, is what?
Yeah.
But, well, $100 a month. Here's how I like to teach it to people. How much beer do you drink? How much cigarettes do you do? How many movies do you go to? Putting together $100 out of things that have no value whatsoever is not hard at all once you make up your mind.
Right. I mean, $100 a month is like a cup of coffee at Starbucks. 20 days out of 30 in a month. That's $100 right there. Just don't buy your coffee at Starbucks.
That's the whole course right there. Is just start doing it today and do things that have value. And once you start experiencing it, it starts to get contagious. It starts to multiply more because you start saying, man, if I could save $100 a month like that, I could save another $300 if I do this, this, and this. But bottom line is I don't want to deviate from that because that's how I take it in that direction. But yeah, so in the next 10 minutes, can you just sort of give a real quick thing on the three scenarios? Because I don't want to say that we were going to do it and then have everybody yell at me because I wasted too much of your time.
No. I was the one that's talking, and then I was trying to be careful not to.
You're doing great today.
To use too many numbers because I love numbers. I love
a guy that's got 6 years left in prison. He's holding on to $10,000. He's not going to make a fortune off of it because he don't want to lose his money. So what should he do just to kind of conservatively do something with his money so he's got something good when he gets out?
Right. So if that money is going to go towards buying a house or paying his expenses when he gets out, it's savings. It's not money that should be invested. But
I'm glad you said that because that's the real point.
Yeah. I can't overemphasize that point enough because what if you lost $2,000 or $3,000 and then you get out of prison and you don't have a job right away and you've got to pay your expenses and your $10,000 is only worth $8,000. I wouldn't take that risk over that short a period of time. But